Well, hello there. Come, warm yourself by my fire. Feels good, yes? Yes. Tell me, my little lovelies, have you ever felt that the universe was out to get you? Oh, everything that could go wrong does go wrong. Those pesky first world problems. Am I right? Maybe you should try looking at such travesties with a different sort of view. Lend an ear. Give me your heart. Steadfast, my little lovelies. You belong to us now in the dark. No. Oh, no. Don't you freaking do this to me. God, out of all the places to crap out. A young woman on a business trip into the city was on one of those middle-of-nowhere stretches of road when her car broke down. She gave the key in the ignition a few turns and admitted defeat when the engine refused to start. Though her destination wasn't too far away from where she was, it was still far enough that not having a working mode of transportation was a serious problem, and it didn't help that there wasn't a single service station for miles. She didn't have a choice, and heaving a heavy sigh, she pulled herself from her car, grabbed as much of her personal belongings as she could, and proceeded to hoof it. After walking for what seemed like forever, she finally spotted a possible sign of life. Coming up at the side of the road was a big old farmhouse with an old paint-torn pickup in the driveway. She decided to approach and rang the doorbell, praying whoever lived there was gracious enough to let her use their phone. She was greeted by an elderly man and woman at the door. "Hi, sorry to trouble you, but I was on my way to the city and my car broke down a little ways from here. Is it possible for me to use your phone to call for a tow truck?" The elders eyed her for a long moment, searching for any possible reasoning of doubt in the young woman's story. Finally, the old man looked over at the old woman next to him, and she nodded in approval. He turns back to the young woman and gave the same approving nod. The couple shuffled aside. "Right over there, dearie." The old woman pointed at the stairwell near the door. Next to it was a rustic little end table and some modest decor, a thick phone book, and there, shining like a beacon to the young woman's eyes, a phone. The young woman softly clapped her hands together in an unspoken bless you towards the kind couple as she made her way to their phone, leaving some of her belongings outside as she walked into the house. She reached for the phone book, quickly flipping through to get a number for a tow company in the city she was headed. Maybe with a little luck, they could swing by and pick her up along with her car and drop it off at a repair shop within the city. She could then find some lodging while her car got fixed and possibly make it to her meeting tomorrow. "Here we go," she mumbled under her breath as she spotted a potential number in the big book. She dialed the number and waited. And waited. And still waited. An eternity later, a voice answered. Though they were polite enough in their mandatory phone greeting, it was clear that whoever it was on the end of the line was none too happy to be on call. The young woman ignored the voice's obvious annoyance and told them her situation.
"We'd be happy to help, ma'am, but it's gonna take some time to get to you."
Okay, how much is some time? I need to be in the city by tomorrow, the young woman pressed.
Well, it may take about 5 hours, maybe more.
The voice replied. 5 hours? I'm only about an hour or so away. How does it take 5?
Our crew is currently out on jobs right now, ma'am. Believe it or not, you're not the only one needing our services.
The young woman went silent, her anger bubbling within her at the flippant audacity of this woman on the other line.
It'll be nightfall soon,
the old man spoke up.
It looks like there ain't much else you can do till the morning, miss.
The old woman chimed in.
My husband's right, dearie. We have food and a spare room you could use.
You can spend the night here, and I'll take you into the city myself in the morning,
the kind old man offered. With little to no options, exhausted and hungry, the young woman nodded in agreement. She gladly hung up the phone on the rude voice, making a mental note to find a different towing company when she got to the city. The night indeed fell quickly. The young woman felt even more grateful to the old couple that took her in and set an extra plate for her at their table. After dinner, the young woman was shown to her room for that night and prepared for bed. The room itself was a small, cozy little space on the first floor, with a window presenting the road she trekked down not too long ago. That road is a bit too close for comfort, she thought, noting it was just a stone's throw between her window and the road. Too tired to press any more concern about it, she did a quick check that the window was at the very least locked and secured, then turned her attention to the bed that called to her weary soul. Heaving a long sigh, she plopped onto the bed, nestled herself into the covers, and quickly drifted into blissful sleep. The blissfulness was short-lived. Late in the mid-morning, the young woman heard a faint, low rumbling coming from the road outside her window. Oh, right. Of course, there's some jerk in a souped-up ride that would be barreling down the road at this time of night. Oh my God, why? At first, she tried to ignore it, keeping her eyes shut tight, clutching tighter the covers around her. But as the sound grew closer and the gritty rumbling grew louder, the young woman's eyes fully opened in sleepy rage. Now she had to listen and wait for the jerk to drive past the house so she could try to get back to sleep. The rumbling continued to get closer, get louder, closer, louder. Okay, bud, move past already, for God's sake, she muttered into the dark. At long last, she heard the rumbling close to the house. She closed her eyes again to give herself a head start back into her much-needed sleep. She thought finally this little ordeal would be over. She readied herself and waited. And waited. And still waited. But the rumbling outside did not fade away. The young woman slowly opened her eyes as a chill started down her spine. The rumble was very much still there, and very much parked directly in front of her window. Her brain, now fully awake, scrambled for what she could do. Should she run and hide somewhere? Find something, anything to defend herself? And what about the sweet old couple? Should she run and wake them? Let them know that there's an intruder trying to get in? Before she could settle on any of the ideas whirling through her head, light filled the dark room from outside. She instinctively shielded her eyes with her forearm, scrambled out of the bed, and landed with a hard thump onto her knees onto the hardwood floor. She pulled herself up, ready to race out the room.
but was stopped dead in her tracks when she heard a new sound, or rather sounds, or much rather, bone-chilling sounds that pierced through the rumbling beyond her closed window.
Is that crying?
Her eyes already adjusted to the light, she slowly turned around and against better judgment made her way toward the window. What she saw outside the window left her rooted where she stood, overwhelmed by astonishment, petrified by fear. There, glowing on the road, was a long black hearse. And though seeing a glowing black hearse in the dead of night was already terrifying enough, inside the vehicle was more disturbing. The hearse was grossly overcrowded with passengers, the source of the cries reverberating into the night, their faces twisted, distorted behind the thickly smudged backseat window. In the driver's seat, there was a man, or what once looked like a man, in a black suit and tie, staring straight ahead. She could see his eyes, his nose, his mouth, but she could also see bits of his skull protruding through his face. The woman continued to stand at the window in shock, too frightened to stay, but far too fearful to leave, when suddenly the driver turned his grotesque face toward her. She immediately noticed his jaw did not sit right on his face, broken at the hinge. But despite the driver's loose jaw, and the gravelly rumble of the hearse, and the incessant crying of the passengers inside, the driver opened his mouth and spoke. And through her sealed window, she heard him clear.
There's room for one more.
Whatever warmth that was left in that young woman's body disappeared. In those intense moments, the driver continued to stare dead at her. She assumed waiting for her answer. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing left her lips. Honestly, what possibly could she say to him? Would he actually take no for an answer? Wasn't she doomed either way? In the end, her response of resistance was a quick and feeble shake of the head. She expected the worst and braced herself. What she didn't expect was the driver to face forward and start to drive. As she watched the hearse slowly drive away, its glow grew brighter, and with it, the cries and howls of the passengers inside. It wasn't long before the hearse was barely visible in the veil of light that surrounded it, and the wails almost deafening. The hearse was completely engulfed in flames. The woman wanted to scream, but her breath caught before she could let out a sound. Not that anyone could hear her from the thunderous sounds of the passengers who were now burning alive, if they were actually alive to begin with. She couldn't take it anymore, and the petrified spell she was under was broken. She ducked down low to the floor and covered her ears and shut her eyes as tightly as she could. Make it stop. Make it stop. God, please. Make it stop. Then everything stopped. Silence. She slowly opened her eyes and carefully moved her hands from her ears. She was too shaken to fully stand. The best she could do was heave her weak body onto her knees and peek out through the window. Nothing. No hearse, no flames, not even a bit of fiery debris of some kind on the road. Absolutely nothing. She turned away and slunk back down to the floor near the window. She pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around her legs. She sat there, curled up and shaking like a leaf in the wind, and remained there until dawn broke. The young woman jumped at the loud knocking at her door.
Rise and shine, dearie. Get ready for breakfast.
Yeah,
Yes, I'll get ready now. Thank you.
The young woman replied. She listened as the old woman shuffled away from the door and heaved a long and heavy sigh. She gave herself a few moments to gather a little more strength before she got dressed and headed into the dining room, where the sweet couple and a hot plate of food awaited her. She greeted them and sat down at her designated seat. To be honest, she wasn't very hungry, but she had a long day ahead, and she needed to keep her wits about her. Plus, it would have been rude to the old folks being so gracious to her, so she forced herself to eat.
Did you sleep well, dearie?
The old woman asked with a warm smile. The young woman just nodded. She didn't have it in her to discuss what happened earlier, but one thing bothered her that she needed to ask.
Did y'all hear any odd sounds last night?
The couple eyed her blankly for a moment, and then the old man spoke. I didn't hear a thing. Did you, honey? The old woman turned to the old man.
Oh, no, nothing.
And turned back to the young woman.
We do sometimes have a wild critter or two roam about these parts. Was that what you heard, dearie?
Yeah, maybe that was it.
That was sure as hell not it. But she wasn't going to press the matter any further. More than anything, she just wanted to put this, whatever you want to call it, behind her. After breakfast, she said her goodbyes and thank yous to the old woman before she loaded her belongings and herself into the pickup with the old man. Roughly 2 hours, because let's face it, the old man's pickup was not the fastest. She made it to the city. He dropped her off at a decent-looking hotel, and she said her goodbyes and thank yous to him as well before she scurried into the building to check herself in. By the time she was able to check in, get freshened up, and call a cab to get to the office building, she was running late for her meeting. The cab didn't even get to do a full stop when she quickly gave the driver the money and hopped out. The absurdly tall building was full of people. All of them hustled and bustled about in the main lobby area, making it even more difficult for the woman to get to her destination. Even worse, her meeting was on the 31st floor, and those elevators took forever. As she waited for the elevator doors to open, she heaved a tired sigh. She still had the matter of her car to deal with. She hoped it was still in one piece out there in the middle of nowhere. She thought maybe after the meeting she should go back to the hotel and have a nap first. She didn't really get a full night's rest after... Nope. Not thinking about it. It never happened. She shut her eyes for a brief minute to try and get the last bit of those dreaded images and sounds out of her mind. They were a trick of the light, heavy indigestion, just a really bad dream. The woman opened her eyes and straightened her posture when she heard the ding that signaled one of the elevator doors was about to open. She watched as a bunch of people stepped out.
Hey, watch it!
The woman snapped as swarms of people pushed past her to get on.
Hold the door!
She hollered as she saw the doors nearly closed. A hand shot through the crack of the closing door, triggering them to slowly open back up.
Oh, thank... Oh.
Her mouth went dry. Color drained from her face. The elevator was grossly overcrowded with people, disturbingly familiar-looking people, especially the man in the black suit and tie standing in front, his hand holding the doors.
There's room for one more.
No, never mind. I'll catch the next one. He pulled his hand away, and the woman watched in silent terror as the doors closed. She took a few shaky steps backwards from the elevator. Her body felt weak. She felt like she was about to faint. She needed to leave, immediately. She didn't get far when she accidentally slammed into the security guard. He asked her if she was all right, but before she could answer, she heard a familiar, gritty rumbling. Faint at first, but then it continued to get closer and louder. Closer louder. The woman looked back at the elevators and watched in despair at the numbers that indicated the floors whirl rapidly by in a violent countdown. Tears blurred her vision as she heard the cries and wails mixing with the power of the heavy rumbling of the falling elevator. The ground shook. Dust and smoke puffed out of the cracks of the closed elevator doors as all the fire alarms in the building went off. The elevator doors stuttered open, bellows of black smoke wafting into the air as it revealed the fiery inferno within. It was terrifyingly clear no one in that elevator survived. My. How the universe works in mysterious ways, yes? Yes. Till next time, have the sweetest dreams, my little lovelies.